Before this video begins, I'd like to just shout out my newest patrons that have joined this month. I want to give a shout out to Lonnie Klutz, C. Montiel, Michael Nugent, and James Sled. Thank you guys for continuing to support the channel and support me and everything we do over here on YouTube. I really do appreciate all your guys' endless support. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying the bonus content that we have over here on Patreon compared to the YouTube channel. I know they go hand in hand, and I know it really does help you guys out with always some extra content. But thank you guys again for your support. We're going to continue to add more and more content over here on the channel as well as on Patreon. And with everything said, let's get into today's video. What's going on, you guys? I'm here today with a new deck profile for you guys, and I have my brother Jerry's first place undefeated ELDLICH Dogmatika deck profile. If you guys are new here, consider subscribing, hit that notification bell. You guys will be notified whenever I upload. You guys will also be notified when I stream over on Twitch. Both links are in the description. As always, if you want to consider building this deck and purchasing any cards for this deck that you see that you like, use my TCG player link in the description below. A portion of what you spend goes back to the channel. It helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. And last but not least, if you want to further support this channel, consider joining my Patreon. Link is in the description. I have 4 different tiers, nothing higher than $10. It has really awesome rewards, really cool stuff that we get to do together, and you guys have access to a lot of exclusive content that you won't actually see here on the YouTube channel. But with that all being said, let's get into it. My brother is fortunate enough that he gets to go to locals. He's in an area where they still have locals, and I'll be honest, I'm super jealous, like so jealous, because I really want to play locals myself, but you know, it is what it is. But he is fortunate enough to go. He ended up going undefeated with this deck. There was no top cut, but he did go undefeated. I also have his matches as well, and he played against all metas. So the funny thing is that even during these tough times, even at locals, players are still choosing to play meta decks. They're not playing like budget decks or cheap decks. They're playing like meta decks, and it's pretty crazy. I love the fact that he actually chose ELDLICH, because you guys know I personally don't own the ELDLICH cards. It was actually one of my biggest misfires of 2020 was not getting the ELDLICH cards. So I haven't been able to actually ever show you guys an IRL profile of ELDLICH, but I'll tell you right now, I'm a huge fan of the deck. I love what he did with it. I was surprised he played 45 cards, but we've always believed a lot of decks can get away with playing more than 40 cards. He's playing some really cool ends in here. We'll just get into it, break it down, and then just talk about its impact in the meta, because I think ELDLICH doesn't get enough attention right now because Dragon Link, Infernoble Knights, all those other decks are overshadowing it. But there's no denying that Golden Boy is still absolutely insane, and all the cards that it comes with are still crazy. It's still at full power, so I think a lot of people forget that this deck was completely untouched by the ban list, and it's definitely a deck that we're going to see more of probably in the future. And when we get IRL events, we'll probably see this deck dominating and doing really well. So we will get into it. So for his hand traps and monsters, we got of course 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs. He's playing a small Dogmatika engine in the face of 2 copies of Ecclesia, 1 copy of Fleur de Lis, and the 1 Maximus, along with of course the triple Nadir's Servant and 2 Punishment, which is his Dogmatika engine. What I like about ELDLICH's just like splashability in every kind of deck is that you can play multiple engines of different like archetypes, different decks, and it really functions well together. Like the Dogmatika engine functions really well with the ELDLICH cards, and I think that's really cool. You can play a minimal engine, whereas most decks would need to max out. You can actually play a minimal engine and still get miles of advantage with it, so I really like it. Hand trap, he's got triple copies of Joel and Lockbird. I absolutely love this. I love the fact that he chose to main deck this. I've talked about this in the last couple of videos. We're in a Joel and Lockbird format, there's no denying, and I think that a lot of people forget just how powerful Joel and Lockbird is this format. So strong against Dragon Link, so good against any deck that really searches. It's actually really good against Dinosaur. I think a lot of people forget about Dinosaur, you know, even though it is one of the top 5 decks of the format. People forget that they actually do get hurt by Droll, because Overraptor searches, Fossil Dig searches. You actually can somewhat slow them down in tandem with some stuff he has in the side deck. I think that Droll is just a fantastic card this format, and I absolutely love that he's main decking it. 3 copies of Valor, that's just generic, good negate. Of course, 2 Golden Boy, like the all-star of the show when it comes to this deck. And then triple copies of Magician Souls. So Magician Souls is one of those cards that when it was announced, we all knew it was going to be powerful. It was going to take Spirals to the next level, and it sure did. It boosted up Dark Magician decks. And then Fleur de Lis came out, and everyone forgets Fleur de Lis is actually the target for Souls, which is absolutely crazy. You get miles of advantage with this card in this deck. A lot of players choose to play Magician Souls in this deck. The synergy that it has with Fleur de Lis, the Dogmatika engine, with the ELDLICH cards is just absolutely obscene, and I think this card is fantastic. It's still very inexpensive, or I think it's somewhat expensive still. It's just a very, very powerful card and really shines in this deck. So I'm really glad he chose to play this. I really like what this card brings to the table. I think it does a lot for this deck, and I think this is definitely a version of the deck we should not be sleeping on, because people are forgetting just how powerful Magician Souls is. A lot of people focus on the invoked Eldritch, but Magician Souls is just amazing in this deck. And then of course triple copies of Nibiru, because it's obviously one of the best hand traps of the format. Onto the spells. He plays very minimal spells, but they are high impact. We've got, of course, 3 copies of the Curse Eldlin. That's staple. His only elixir is of White Destiny. Again, I'm not an expert with Eldritch, so I don't know if you should be playing White Destiny and the Black Destiny. I'm not actually sure. I don't really know like what the ratios are these days, but he played kind of like a minimal engine, and clearly it worked out for him going undefeated. But there's that. 2 copies of Droplet. Obviously it just turns off the board and you just absolutely just Raffle Stop through the board. Golden Boy just clears stuff, so it's very, very strong. 3 copies of Nadir's Servant. This is just the best card in the deck. Like, I feel like this resolves, you pretty much just win because you're setting up window. You're just setting up so much advantage. It's very hard to lose when this resolves. That's it for the spells. For the traps, of course, triple copies of Conquistador, 2 copies of Punishment to round out the rest of the Dogmatika cards. This card, I can't believe it's a common. I think this card is like really already due for a rarity bump. Anyone that's played Dogmatika like me or just knows how powerful this card is. This card is insane. This card buys you a turn and it gives you so much advantage. You're locked out of your extra deck, but guess what? You don't go into your extra deck in Eldritch. Like, that's the whole thing, is you barely even touch your extra deck with this. You just beat them down with Golden Boy and your Dogmatika cards, and it's absolutely insane. Punishment is ridiculous in the Dogmatika strategy, and it's even better in this deck. So I really like that he chose to play more than 1 copy, because you definitely get more mileage out of multiple copies. 2 copies of Scarlet Sanguine, card still at 3. Why would you not play it? 3 copies of Haquero, and then to round out the rest of his hand traps, he did play 3 impermanents. So I want you guys to notice something. He's playing, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12, I believe it's 15 hand traps. Let's see, 3, 6, 9. Yeah, 15 hand traps in this 45 card deck, and they're all the best ones. People may argue with Valor, but I think Valor was the next best choice after playing, you know, Imperm and Ash and all of these cards. The fact that you can Valor and Imperm a lot of the problematic monsters, this format is very strong. Granted, Valor may lose out to triple tactics, but Infinite Impermanence does not, so this card is amazing. And the last card, of course, is Shadal Schism in order to make your win to play. For his side deck, now normally I would have the side decks over on Patreon, but since he sent me the entire list, it was fair to just show this whole list. Since this isn't a deck I constructed myself, I feel that it's only fair to show you guys what he did play. Now remember, this is locals based, but his side deck is very, very meta focused, which is very good, because this is one of the best decks I can get, especially when your locals is actually filled with meta decks. So very, very strong. Of course, Triple Lancia card is just amazing against Dinos, against Dragonlink, against any deck that banishes. This card is great. 2 copies of Ghost Ogre. This card is still very high impact if you know what to Ghost Ogre against your opponent. A lot of players have to learn where to Ghost Ogre, but the card is still very strong, and it just gives him more hand traps when siding, whether going first or second. The 1 Scythe, because he is playing the Triple Sanctum, obviously it just shuts down their entire turn, and this has good synergy as well with the 3 Lancia. The 1 of Prankatops, obviously, because it's at 1. 2 copies of Gozen Match. He said this was the most iffy card in his side deck. He said there isn't a lot he would change, and he wouldn't change anything in the main deck. He said in the side deck, though, he would probably swap this out for Zombie World, because Zombie World is actually ridiculous against some of these decks. They just can't play under Zombie World when all their monsters become zombies, and they're reliant on playing like dragons or anything like that, so they become completely locked out. So the only switch in the side deck he said he would make is he would swap out the Gozen Matches for 2 copies of Zombie World. The 1 copy of Feather Duster, because obviously it's at 1 and it came back after 16 years, and 2 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. This card is insane. The card has gone up a lot actually since its release. This card is just so strong in the mirror match, so strong against dinosaurs, so strong against a lot of matches. Like, you take a monster and banish a monster, that's just ridiculous, and it's optional too. So this card is insane. I think we're going to continue to see this card in a lot more side decks, and we might even see it in some people's main decks. And then last but not least, I have the extra deck real quick. His Shadals, of course, are Abakalone and Winda. That's standard. 2 copies of Elder Entity and TSS in order to send and pop. The 1 Makaba, because like me, he is playing the Cyber Dragon Nova, because, you know, if you play against Maximus, they Maximus you send this, and you send Elder Entity, you pop a card, and you literally summon a Makaba for more interruption, so it's fantastic. The 1 Titaniclad, all you need. 1 Omega, card's crazy, good recycling. Of course, he's got the OTK machine and access code talker. One of my favorite links ever, the BLS, because a lot of decks can't deal with this card. He does play the 1 Halki Fibrax. You are able to play this in this deck. The 1 copy of Almirage, the 1 copy of Secure Garnet, and the 1 copy of Selene. I'm sure the Halki Fibrax and the Selene and all that probably works your way up to the access code talker OTK. But that is the main deck, the side deck, and the extra deck. I really like it. Lastly, for you guys, I'm just going to give you guys his matchups to wrap up the video. So he in locals, he ended up playing and ended up going against Pendulum. He 2-0'd it. Probably just because it wasn't Triff. If it was Triff, I don't know what would have happened. But yeah, he played against Pendulums and he 2-0'd it. Round 2, he played against Adamantipator, which also decided to incorporate the fossil cards, and he ended up beating that 2-0. Next, he played against Untitled Dogmatika, and he ended up beating that 2-1. And then his last round, he played against Dragon Link, and he 2-0'd it. He literally 2-0'd it, and that's crazy. That speaks miles to the power of this deck and just how effective Eldritch really is this format. And I think the deck needs more attention, so I'm really proud of him for deciding to pick this deck over every other deck. I know for a fact that if he wanted to, he could build any of the meta decks, but he chose to play this deck, and I really like it. He puts his own twists on things. Like, him and I don't always see eye to eye when we come to building decks. Like, we'll make a lot of arguments and stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm really happy for the success he had with this deck, and hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you guys want to see more profiles like this, like profiles from locals in areas where they're actually able to play, I can definitely bring that to you guys. I know my brother Johnny also was able to play locals in his area in Kansas. He was able to win going undefeated with Infernoble Knight. So there's a lot of places, unfortunately not California, where you can play locals. But if you guys want to see more profiles like this, I'll definitely be talking to more players and try to get their profiles over here on the channel. But hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll be sure to get back to you and let me know what you guys think of ELDLICH Dogmatika in this upcoming format, and I'll definitely be bringing you guys more profiles in the future. But that's all I got to say. Shout out to my brother Jerry. I love you, man. Thank you for sending me your profile. Best of luck in any other tournaments and stuff you play in, and let me know what you guys think of the profile. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.